Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Women, Peace and Security in the Face of Russian Aggression Perspectives from Ukraine, a panel organized by the Global Network of Women Peace Builders, the Democracy Development Center, Ukraine, World Federation of Ukrainian Women's Organizations, and the NGO Committee on the Status of Women in New York. I am Mavic Cabrera Baleza, the Chief Executive Officer of the Global Network of Women Peace Builders. I will serve as your moderator for today's panel. And our objectives in organizing this discussion is that to give opportunity for Ukrainian women peace builders to discuss the disproportionate impact of the Russian aggression in Ukraine on them, on women and girls, and to share information on women's humanitarian response and continued peace building, and to generate support for from the international community and promote coordination among different humanitarian actors and peace builders. We also aim to discuss the impact of the Russian invasion, not only on Ukraine, but also on other countries in Eastern Europe and South Caucasus, and identify collective regional and international response. And finally, we hope to promote gender responsive and conflict and crisis sensitive response to the Russian invasion. Before we continue, I want us to take a moment of silence to think about the women peace builders and all peace and democracy loving Ukrainian people who are gravely affected by this escalating violence. Even though the signs have been there for a while, the invasion has been more painful and difficult than they ever imagined. Thank you for your solidarity. Before we start with a substantive discussion, I just want to share a few technical reminders. This panel is being held on a webinar format, and that means we will only see the panelists and the moderator on the screen. But there is the chat and Q&A box, and we encourage everyone to introduce themselves on the chat and make their comments and raise their questions on the Q&A box. We have interpretation in Ukrainian and Russian, and most, if not all of our speakers will speak in their language, and we've also in English or Ukrainian, and we've ensured that there's Russian interpretation because we are hoping we also have Russian peace builders and activists joining us. But equally important, we want the representatives of the Russian government to hear from Ukrainian women peace builders and other women peace builders from neighboring countries. Ukrainian women and the women who support them from the neighboring countries demand a dialogue, a real dialogue, to put an end to this senseless violence. And without further ado, I would like to call on our co-organizer, the chair of the NGO Committee on the Status of Women, our dear friend and a great supporter of women peace builders, Ms. Huri Gyudelekian. Huri, do we have you already? I don't see Huri yet. I'm sure she would send us a message as soon as she is able to. So I now turn over to another dear friend and a member of the board of the Global Network of Women Peace Builders, Honorable Betty Aguaro, Member of Parliament from South Sudan. She brings a unique voice to this conversation, not only because she's coming from a conflict-affected country, but she has played a key role in peace-building processes, including serving as a mediator in the peace negotiation between the Ugandan government and the Lord's Resistance Army led by Joseph Kony. Honorable Betty Aguaro, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mavic. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I am Betty Aguaro, as Mavic has already introduced. I speak before you this morning to present the solidarity statement with the women of Ukraine and all its citizens on behalf of the global network of women peace builders. I also express solidarity with Ukrainian women on behalf of and domination of another government. So we have seen it. But we continue to persist and demand inclusive and sustainable peace with women's voices at the center of all efforts to stop the violence. We will work hand in hand with our Ukrainian sisters until we achieve our collective aspirations for long-lasting peace. I'm now going to read to you an appeal on the cessation of hostilities. An appeal for immediate cessation of hostilities in Ukraine and respect of international human rights and humanitarian laws. The Global Network of Women Peace Builders strongly condemns the military invasion of Ukraine and the recognition of the breakaway regions of Luhansk and Donetsk as independent states by the Russian Federation. We call on all parties to ensure respect for human rights, women's rights, and international human law. The military invasion and the 2014 annexation of the Crimean Peninsula and territory of the Donetsk and Luhansk violate the United States. Since the current Russian invasion, 352 have died and 1,700 people have been wounded. This adds to the more than 14,000 casualties, 30,000 injuries, and over 2 million IDPs in 2014. Moreover, due to the invasion, Ukrainian women are at the highest risk of trafficking, exposure to sexually transmitted diseases, and restricted access to education, employment, and health care. The Russian Federation's recognition of Luhansk and Donetsk as independent from Ukraine, along with its ongoing military operations in Berdyansk, Enerhodar, Lviv, Kharkiv, Kherson, Kyiv, and Zaporizhzhia regions have resulted in mass human rights violations and displacements, even threatening peace and stability, not only in Europe, but in the entire world. These actions violate the United Nations Charter, international humanitarian law, and the Minsk Accords as a set of 2015 agreements that sought to end hostilities and reinstate protection for human rights in the Donbas region. In the face of growing humanitarian crisis, Ukrainian women are mobilizing to distribute humanitarian aid, disseminate critical information through social media, and help families flee from attacks of Russian military forces. Nevertheless, talks in Belarus between Russia and Ukraine have failed to include Ukrainian women meaningfully. It is vital to support humanitarian efforts led by the Ukrainian women and ensure their participation in decision-making on peace and security in accordance with the Ukrainian National Action Plan on United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325. The Global Network of Women Peace Builders urges United Nations Security Council and the broader international community to take all necessary actions to restore security in Ukraine, protect civilians, and prioritize their needs, especially those women, peace builders, activists, and vulnerable population. The Global Network Women Peace Builders stands in solidarity with the people of Ukraine, especially women and youth peace builders, who are key actors in the survival and resilience of their families and communities during a crisis. We must continue to listen and amplify the voices of the Ukrainian people. We reinforce their calls for one, an immediate ceasefire, cessation of hostilities, and adherence with international human law. Safe and accessible humanitarian corridors for evacuation and delivery of aid that reaches all Ukrainian people in need, especially minority communities. Initiation of a peace process which ensures the meaningful participation of women, youth, and other historically marginalized communities at all stages of negotiations. Provisions of rapid technical and financial support to Ukrainian civil society organizations, including women rights organizations on the front lines of the humanitarian crisis. Protection of women's rights and human rights in Ukraine by member states, multilateral institutions. An investigation of the crime of aggression, war crimes, and crimes against humanity committed within the territory of Ukraine by the International Criminal Court. Accountability of human rights, violation through gender responsive monitoring and accountability mechanisms led by international actors, security and integration of key provisions of the Women, Peace and Security Resolutions into all programs and security initiatives in response to the conflict in Ukraine. I thank you all for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Betty, for sharing the solidarity statement from the Global Network of Women Peace Builders, but also for bringing solidarity message from South Sudanese women peace builders. And colleagues who have joined us today, the statement is available on the website of the Global Network of Women Peace Builders, and our communications director has also posted the link on the chat. I now call on our good friend and co-organizer representing the NGO Committee on the Status of Women New York and serving as their outstanding chair, Huri Yudelakian. Huri, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mavic, and apologies for being a minute late. And thank you and Global Network Women Peace Builders for doing the important work for peace and security. We cannot advance if we have war. And we all know it's patriarchy and autocracy that we must end. And that's what NGO CSW is here for, to collectively bring women's and girls' voices to crush whatever that brings up the fear that brings up in them when we are fighting for advancement of gender equality, democracy, and individual and collective human rights that scares them for some reason. We must never give up. We are always here to support you and the collective women peace builders and human rights defenders. And I send my deepest condolences for those who are suffering right now, because it is unbelievably scary to have bombs come down on you. I mean, I know firsthand myself, I've been through war myself, and we are standing here with you, and we will keep fighting and amplifying your voices. So thank you, Mavic, and I can't wait to hear all the solutions and recommendations that are coming from Women Peace Builders.
Thank you so much, Huri. Thank you for your constant support to Women Peace Builders, especially local women and youth. We now move on to our substantive discussion with our Ukrainian partners, Women Peace Builders and women's rights organizations. And then later on, we'll also hear from our colleagues from Georgia and Moldova. I would first remind the audience that I'm not able to read the full bios of our panelists. The time would not do justice for their amazing work, but we will paste their bios on the chat. So keep an eye on those amazing bios. The first one that I would like to hear from is Tamara Ogrodova from the Unity for the Future civil society group in southeastern Ukraine, in Zaporizhia Oblast, and in the past 2 or 3 weeks has been working 24/7 to respond to the worsening humanitarian crisis. But before we go into the detail of their work, Tamara, I would like to ask you, what is the response of the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian people other than what we see in the international media? And we often see, or we often realize that most of what we hear and see does not reflect the realities in local communities. So tell us about that.
Я хотела бы сказать о том, что, наверное, все, начиная от президента и заканчивая самыми маленькими детьми, все испытывают возмущение, гнев, боль и страх. Почему в 21 веке на виду у всего мира огромная страна с ядерным потенциалом готовилась напасть на Украину? В течение месяца об этом говорили. И тем не менее, наверное, не все было сделано для того, чтобы остановить эту войну. Но я хотела бы сегодня говорить уже от имени тех женщин, которым мы помогаем. Наш благотворительный фонд «Едність за майбутнє» сейчас работает как гуманитарная организация вместе с Эстонским советом по делам беженцев. Мы оказываем помощь тем женщинам и детям, тем мирным жителям, которые сегодня находятся в горящих городах, в горящих домах. Это Чернигов, который окружен со всех сторон, где сутки женщины и дети не выходят из подвалов, где уже нет просто сил выдерживать эту ситуацию, и они просят: закройте небо, пожалуйста, закройте небо, чтобы оттуда не летела смерть. Это Харьков, где мы работаем с Ротари-клубом, работаем с общественными организациями, и сегодня 200 человек, которые получают гуманитарную помощь, среди них женщины и дети. И я тоже оттуда слышу: дайте гуманитарный коридор, дайте возможность вывести наших детей, не обстреливайте для того, чтобы мы имели возможность хотя бы выехать. Это масштабная война, такая же, как было в 1941 году. Если кто-то думает, что это просто конфликт, нет. Это масштабная война, широкомасштабная война. Сегодня половина Запорожской области занята. Вчера мы все женщины не спали всю ночь. Был пожар на атомной электростанции, где 6 ядерных реакторов. Все помнят Чернобыль, там взорвался 1 реактор. Здесь 6 реакторов. И на этот город наступали, хотя 1000 жителей перед этим вышли и встали перед колонной. Они не пропустили в город военных, но тем не менее они стали обстреливать город и наступали. На сегодня я бы хотела сказать о Херсоне, где тоже я спрашиваю о том, какую гуманитарную помощь мы можем перечислить. Они говорят, у нас нет сегодня ни продуктов питания, ни лекарств, аптеки закрыты, мы ничего не можем, и город окружен. Это страшная ситуация, которая сегодня творится в Украине. И мы обращаемся ко всем, не останьтесь в стороне от того, что творится в Украине. Мы одни боремся с огромной страной, с огромным злом, которая сегодня пытается убивать. И сегодня погибают не только наши солдаты, но погибают и молодые ребята, которых сюда прислали. Они тоже погибают. И это злая воля людей, которые не знают, что такое страх перед общественным мнением, которые не понимают общественного мнения. Но в мире есть страны, где правительства прислушиваются к общественному мнению. И мы призываем абсолютно всех: помогите решить вопрос, закрыть небо, чтобы не стреляли, не бомбили жилые кварталы, и чтобы женщины и дети не слышали этих разрывов. Если город окружен, чтобы были гуманитарные коридоры, через которые могли бы выехать женщины с детьми. Нужно говорить о перемирии, и на первой же встрече необходимо, чтобы были женщины. Во время перемирия останавливали бомбежку, останавливали войну. Когда собираются 2 делегации, а продолжают стрелять, а мы ждем, что как только будут переговоры, остановится стрельба, и, возможно, будет хотя бы какая-то возможность людей выехать. Сегодня дети рождаются в подземельях, дети рождаются в бомбоубежищах. Это страшные картины, которые мы видим в интернете. Поэтому спасибо огромное глобальной мережі жінок-миробудівниць. Спасибо Мавик Кабрера-Балеза. И хочу сказать, Мавик, мне трудно удержаться от слез. Все те громады, которых мы с вами обучали, половина из них сегодня заняты оккупантами. Я разговариваю с ними по телефону, я поддерживаю как могу и говорю о том, что мы будем на международном уровне выступать, мы будем обращаться ко всем. И я хотела бы привести пример. В 2008 году у нас в Запорожье была Энн Ширли Гудел, канадка.
Thank you so much,
82
Tamara.
года написала. Мы будем
We will come back to you on the next question. I would like to ask Maria for now. Maria, I have the same question. What do we not see in the media, and you yourself being a close media follower, and I believe you have been interviewed too. And then what is your opinion on this negotiation? I'm putting air quotes there, negotiation between Ukraine and Russia. Over to you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Mavic. Thank you, Global Network of Women Peace Builders, for having us. Well, the negotiations that we see, it's a farce. As Tatiana said, Russians didn't even bother to stop the shelling of civilian targets. And they came with the demands that Ukraine surrenders. This is not a negotiation in good faith. And you cannot expect them to be reasonable and to adhere to what they outline in the documents. Russia is a bully. And I'm sorry, but Russian women in their majority support invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And even Russian feminists support this invasion. There are literally like a dozen of women feminists in Russia who still are supportive of Ukraine. We know them all by name. And Russian women, even Russian mothers of soldiers, they say that they support Putin in this invasion. So I don't see how we can negotiate with them and agree with them, because we've seen throughout these last 8 years, Russian military bombarding the humanitarian corridors that they agreed to establish. You cannot negotiate to somebody who lies to your face. And I don't see international community intervening so far. The NATO head person said that Russians are bombing irresponsibly. Well, this is what Russians do. They bomb civilian targets to force the flood of refugees, to help promote the idea of hatred towards people who don't look like you in Europe. And then we have politicians in Europe that support Putin's agenda. So this is a long game by a KGB agent who sees himself as a strong man who wants to restore what was taken from him, that was his rightfully. And this conflict, as it is presented in international media, it almost never speaks about women as agents. What we see there, we see the pictures of our president that everybody is fawning over. We see our like small videos from people who observe defiant Ukrainians sticking up to the Russians. But we don't see those hundreds and thousands of women who locally, like Tatiana's organization does, work with those who are IDPs, those who are refugees, those who need help right now. They are not mentioned in international media. I've been very closely watching them, and you can hear much more about how we are racist towards African students. And like African countries, not all of them, some of them just abandoned their citizens here and didn't organize evacuation for them. There is a general protocol that Ukrainian guards follow on the border. You let first go women with children, then it is children, women, and then it is foreign men. Because, well, if they have the visa, they can pass, there is no problem. But if there is a line that lasts for kilometers, why do foreigners think that they have the right of passage first before women with small children? We've seen videos of how they behave there. And when Ukrainians are accused of racism, well, okay, maybe we are racist, but we are not as racist as you, who push away women and children from your way to get out of the country that gave you refuge and education. Sorry. And also this topic of Ukrainians being racist is being forced by Russian bots, which has been tracked already to Russian-held bot farms. So, and Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs established a hotline for any foreign student that is staying in Ukraine and requires assistance. And I will share the link and the phone that any foreign student can call and get assistance right away.
Thank you very much for sharing your views, Maria, and for clarifying that what has happened is not a negotiation to end the violence that is happening now, and nor should we even have any illusion of seeing women at that so-called negotiation table. Absolutely. And thank you also for highlighting that the media has heard from the usual subjects of the news, high-level decision makers, mostly men, talking about military operations, but never the women-led response to the emergency and the continuing efforts of women peace builders. Thank you so much for those very important points. I now would like to ask you on the specific impacts of the invasion on women and girls. Do we have Ella already with us, or other colleagues? I would like to inform our audience that we have several speakers lined up, And they have agreed, and in fact, they have requested to have this discussion for the same reason that I highlighted. They want their voices to be heard, and they want all stakeholders in the international community, including the Russian government, to hear this conversation. But in addition to their plan to participate today, they are also moving from one region to another, crossing borders to carry and distribute humanitarian relief. And yeah, a number of them will be joining us a little bit later. So I will ask Tamara again, what is the specific impact of this violence on women and girls?
Конкретное насилие оказало самое прямое воздействие на женщин и девушек. Они оказались в ситуации заложников. С одной стороны, боль и страх за детей. Они не могут вывести детей, они находятся вместе с детьми в подвалах. Они видят это все, что сыплется с неба, где стреляют. Они теряют детей. Женщины, которые беременные, обращаются к нам и спрашивают, как нам доехать до родильного дома для того, чтобы родить ребенка. Женщины, которые на сегодня пытаются помогать, стали волонтерами, они очень много времени тратят на это, и они тоже очень просят, пожалуйста, мы как волонтеры готовы работать, но мы боимся, что нас расстреляют. И эта стрельба, которая идет с воздуха, стрельба, которая идет на земле, она сегодня приводит в ужас женщин, потому что они понимают, что могут быть убиты их дети. И вот это самое страшное на сегодняшний день, что волнует детей. Куда бы мы ни позвонили, Херсон, который окружен и в который вошли оккупационные войска, Харьков, который бомбят, Чернигов, который окружен, и женщины просят вывезите детей оттуда. И вы понимаете, не прислушиваются, и, к сожалению, нету у оккупантов никакого сострадания к тому, что эти люди просто хотят покинуть. Поэтому мы считаем, что, наверное, наша женская солидарность, может быть, поможет решить эти вопросы, гуманитарные коридоры и закрыть небо. Я бы очень хотела подключить женщину, которая третьи сутки находится в подвале. Она руководитель общественной организации. Сегодня мы с ней разговаривали. Она сказала о том, что из Чернигова пыталась выехать женщина-судья. Ее расстреляли прямо на дороге. Она ехала в своей машине. Поэтому я сейчас наберу, и она говорит хорошо на английском языке. Я бы хотела, чтобы она хотя бы через возможность, я включу телефон, чтобы она сказала тоже, как им тяжело, что они чувствуют и что они просят. Поэтому, пожалуйста, есть такая возможность послушать человека, который под бомбами, под обстрелом находится уже, послушать женщину, которая под бомбами и под обстрелами находится уже не одни сутки. Да, я включаю, Наташа, можете говорить.
Yes, Tamara, we would love to hear from her.
I'm glad to hear everything, and I would like to speak from the chair. I am the chairwoman of non-governmental organization, and our city is going tremendous hell attacks from the sky, especially for 3 days. Even they did not stop even for an hour, for 10 minutes. They bomb us, shell us from Grad, Smerch, and from ballistic missiles. Lots of destroyed houses. Only for yesterday, only for 1 day, 49 civilian people were among them children, women, and elderly people. They suffer most of all. Our city is surrounded by, is occupied around, so we are closed as a city, so we do not have access to medicine at all, and we have only yesterday 4 cars of food, so no one can go out from the city. So what we need is to close the sky, to shelter the sky, and we need humanitarian corridors and assistance to let children and women to go out around the city, because we under we under terrible shooting 3 days. 3 days. Some parts of the city do not have heat, do not have water, do not have gas. It's humanitarian catastrophe here and humanitarian as well. So we do need your assistance, and especially in closing sky and humanitarian corridor. Please do help us.
Thank you so much. And
Наташенька,
and thank you,
спасибо огромное.
Tamara, for introducing us to her. I now see our friend Ella Lamak, who is the Executive Director of the Democracy
Наташ, потом
Development
перезвони.
Center, where Maria Dmitrieva also works. Ella, I know you've been busy moving from one region to another and crossing borders to pick up and distribute humanitarian relief. So and you've seen, the different situations in different parts of the country. I would like to ask you, what have been the specific impacts of this aggression, the Russian aggression, on women and girls?
Hello, everybody. I want to say that this is my first vision we should say about if we can protect our women and girls, if we can protect everybody and everywhere in Ukraine, because it's today it's Russia militaries, it's or Putin finding Zaporizhia atom station. It is danger not only for Ukraine, it's danger for all Europe, for the world. How we can say about Millennium Goals and other convention, other declaration, if we have its problem, ecological problem for everyone in Europe, in the world. At the first, we should write official letter for not only for UN or NATO, for an energy system or different organization about we need security and sky security. And also we should ask Putin why he is finding atom station, electricity, gas, etc. And also, if we are talking about what is important, if we are talking about our people, and the first, our women and children are killed. Our children and women stay in storage in ground. They don't have food, they don't have water. And many people in west of Ukraine invited different people from east of Ukraine, but they don't have enough food, they don't have enough different stuff, but their door is open for everyone. But we have a psychological emotion. Sometimes it's difficult to understand when and how this will stop and how. And another problem, nobody believes that Putin can say stop and go away from Ukraine. Actually, if we are talking about women and girls in the village, they invited many people from different regions, but they don't have elementary food, some place for people which wants to sleep, etc. And a lot of schools open a door, a lot of kindergarten open a door for refugees, but it's not enough. It's not enough because food will be finished, psychological motion will be finished, and they need to talk with them, they need to speak them. And just example, we organized class for children on English language, on historical class. We organize it for children and for women, debate class, and we should organize some activity for them. It is if we have some volunteers, international volunteers who can speak with them, can teach them with English, just example, or some language, it will be helpful for them, because they should feel that some people talk with them, some people protect them.
So
Thank
much,
you.
Ella, for that sharing. Now, we shift back the discussion on the humanitarian response that our colleagues here are carrying out. Because I believe many in our among our audience members are asking how they can support. But then before calling on our speakers, I just want to address two technical questions that keep appearing on our chat box. The interpretation, if you are using a laptop, is at the bottom next to the Q&A box. You can choose Russian, Ukrainian, and of course English from the interpretation button. It works perfectly, and we have amazing interpreters. And then the bios of the speakers are being shared. Please scroll up to see the bios of the previous speakers. The discussion is being recorded and it will be available on YouTube. And the statement that was presented by Honorable Betty Aguaro earlier is also we will reshare the link to that. And if you miss the link, it's also on the website of the Global Network of Women Peace Builders. Now, we go back to the humanitarian response and mostly women-led humanitarian action. And some of you have already stated that there have been instances that the Russian army are blocking the humanitarian corridors. Other than that, first, if you can enumerate clearly what are the most crucial needs in terms of humanitarian response, and then what are your other challenges? And we also would like to ask what is the best way of sending financial support so to aid your humanitarian action. And then we'd also be interested to hear the coordination among the different humanitarian actors, the women's organizations, as well as international humanitarian organizations. So I will go back to Tamara, and then Ella, if you can prepare your intervention on those particular points that our audience members are also looking forward to
Я бы
hearing.
хотела сказать, что на сегодняшний день... Да, спасибо, Мавик. Я хотела бы сказать, что на сегодняшний день мы очень тесно работаем с эстонским советом по делам беженцев. Это организация, которая на протяжении 3 лет оказывала помощь людям, проживающим на контактной линии, там, где стреляли все это время. И сейчас они предоставили гуманитарную помощь. И география, по которой мы работаем, это Черниговская область, Харьковская область, Запорожская область, Херсонская область, Николаевская и Одесская. Это те области, где мы работаем с общественными организациями, которые оказывают гуманитарную помощь, с представителями местной власти, с представителями Красного Креста. Вот. Мы стараемся оказывать, у нас есть счета, на которые мы принимаем валюту, потом ее переводим в гривны и гибко работаем, оказывая от конкретной помощи конкретной семье, женщинам и детям, это в первую очередь, и оплачиваем лекарства, продукты питания для больниц, в которых лечатся люди, которые пострадали в результате военного конфликта, которые сегодня болеют ковидом. Вот поэтому у нас контакты с больницами. В Харьков мы оплатили 400 пледов для тех людей, которые находились в метро и дома которых были разбиты на окраине. Очень тяжелая ситуация в Мариуполе. Мы сейчас работаем, там постоянные обстрелы. Работаем с теми, кто жил на контактной линии. Это Красногоровка, это Марьинка, это все те как бы все те громады, которые были, Мавик, у нас с вами на наших тренингах. И с этими женщинами сегодня работаем. В основном это действительно женщины. 80% тех, кто сегодня занимается гуманитарной помощью, работает с нами, это женщины. Мы готовы принимать деньги, мы готовы принимать на наш счет. Географически мы находимся в Запорожье. Пока есть возможность, мы здесь работаем. Если нет, мы будем переезжать, но мы будем продолжать работать на эти регионы.
Thank you so much, Tamara. Ella, do you have additions to what Tamara has shared in response to the
Yes,
questions?
it's
What are
important.
the challenges? How
Yeah.
to send financial and other forms of support that would, that would really reach you, and yeah, other concerns in terms of how you carry out the humanitarian response. Over to you.
Actually, thank you very much. It's a lot of women here are ready to work, are ready to change professional orientation. They need for them new vision about how they can work, how they can find a new job. Just example, online, cybersecurity and other. They want to help and they want to work, and so they need for them psychologist consultation, and to share for them methods how they can help each other. What is conflict resolution? How they can work together, women from different regions, how they can work together, how they can protect themselves, children. Amy asked us about, can you some machine, computer, I'm ready to work, I want to work. So it's important to support project for women about how they can use technology for them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ella, and thank you also, Tamara. Dear audience, there are information being shared on the chat box on how you can send support. Maria, I want to ask you again now, what are the other than the humanitarian efforts, what are women peace builders, women's rights organizations are taking on in response to the invasion? Is there continued peace building efforts? And I should, I apologize. Before I turn the microphone over to you, for the information of our audience, Maria, Tamara, and Ella, and all others that you will hear later, we've been working with them on the implementation of Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security, and the supporting resolutions, as well as the Security Council resolutions on youth, peace, and security. But what we're hearing now, and seeing from the picture that is being painted by our Women Peace Builders colleague, is that it is in the DNA of women peace builders to also be humanitarian responders. And they take it on with resources or not. They make do, and they are innovative and resourceful. But as they have described, there's still a lot more, the need is great. So support from all of us who are participating in this discussion, and all of our networks would be critical. Now, Maria, going back to you, other initiatives taken on by women's rights organizations and women peace builders apart from humanitarian response?
Well, humanitarian response, supporting the war effort, organizing logistics locally for those who are low in mobility. Those are the things that we've been doing in the last weeks. We've been trying to reach Russian women's organizations as well, to inform them about what is going on here in Ukraine with their children, but no response so far. Even our Ministry of Defense started a hotline for mothers from Russia to check whether their son has already been killed or he is a prisoner of war, so that she can be put in contact with him. And we've been informing about this initiative everybody we can reach. We've been really vocal about the needs of women in the military, and we are talking about emerging information about cases of sexual violence. We thought that, at first we hoped that this is going on so quickly that Russian soldiers won't be having time to rape anybody, but there have been already confirmed cases in Khersonska Oblast. So along with killing, gunning down families with children, they are now raping women to death. And on the other side of the conflict line, we see repeated reports of women that local organized gangs in Poland at the Ukrainian-Polish border are trying to abduct. And we've heard about similar cases in Germany when local pimps try to entice women, especially young women with children, to join their they offer them a place to stay. Women are so afraid of refugee camps that they agree, and there have been several cases. We heard from our feminist colleagues from Germany that they saved those women, but we won't hear about those women they didn't manage to save. And German brothels are notorious for their treatment of women and women who are refugees, especially, not only Ukrainian, Syrian too. So we are now seeing that the capitalist exploitation of women in pornography, in prostitution, in surrogacy is becoming more and more a possibility for Ukrainian women refugees. We see it in advertisement on Facebook. So they're using women in desperate situation to promote their services. I mean, specifically the surrogacy clinics. And this is something that we as feminists are trying to address and prevent, but it is going to be an uphill battle because if you have a war waging in the middle of Europe, very little attention will be paid to suffering of women in prostitution, as we've seen time and again in conflicts before. But what we do as well, we monitor the legislation that is being adopted. We put in contact international organizations and local initiatives. And well, I think that we have been pretty busy so far.
Excuse me.
Thank you,
Excuse me.
Maria. And yeah, it's heartbreaking what you've just shared, that there are already evidences of sexual violence and instances of trafficking. And I'm sure you're documenting the what you're seeing and recording the information that you receive. It's very, very important to hold of that information in place. And yeah, being a member of GNWP, as you know, we coordinate closely with the Office of the Special Representative on Sexual Violence in Conflict. I now would move on to our colleagues from the neighboring countries, specifically Georgia and Moldova. I want to ask Victoria Rosa, who's a foreign policy expert and a member of a foreign policy. Actually, she headed the Foreign Policy Association of Moldova. Victoria, could you tell us what are the implications of the Russian invasion to Moldova and how this should also be, at the center of our conversations?
Yes,
Over to you.
yes, thank you very much, Mavik, for giving me the floor. I will try to be quite short in order to give the possibility to others to express themselves as well. But definitely first, what I would like to say is that Moldova stands with Ukraine, and Moldovan authorities as well as the Moldovan population practically requested for the war to stop, and also stands with the territorial integrity, sovereignty, and independence of Ukraine. Also, I wanted to mention that indeed this war does have an impact on the region, does have an impact on Moldova. And first of all, the impact is because of the fact that unfortunately all the region will have to suffer a crucial economic crisis, because when the war will stop, then definitely we will have to think about economy reconstruction, economic recovery, but also we would need to think about how to restructure and to help infrastructurally for Ukraine to recover as well as a neighboring country. Of course, another thing that it is quite important is the fact that Moldova has an important part in its trade balance, the trade with Ukraine, with Russia, and with Belarus. That means that now, practically due to the war in Ukraine, we have to reshift our trade. That is quite a big pressure, but also impacts the economy of the Republic of Moldova. This is why Moldova has requested the international partners, the European countries, to help us reshift our trade balance and the imports and the exports that Moldova is doing. At the same time, I think that one of the most important thing that we have to pay attention to and to think about is the refugees which are coming from Ukraine. And to be sincere, we would not really want to refer to the people coming from Ukraine as refugees, because we consider them to be neighbors, to be friends, and to be part of our families. Because I think that each and every person in Moldova has at least one friend or one relative in Ukraine, and vice versa. And this is why I think that the Moldovan population has shown so much solidarity to people in Ukraine, and Moldova practically is now working in order to offer all the support to the Ukrainian citizens coming and crossing the Ukrainian Moldovan checkpoints. As you know, Moldova has a unique crisis center unit, and practically all the governmental institutions are in actions, and they are working in order to offer support. That means that we are offering lodging, we are offering food, we are offering all the healthcare which is needed. We are offering transportation, we are offering telecommunication, and all of this is offered for free. That means that Moldova is putting a lot of human effort, but also a lot of financial assistance in place. Unfortunately, we have to mention that the capacities are shrinking, the financial capacities are shrinking very fast, and this is why the Moldovan government has requested assistance to the international community, because in order to continue to provide all the necessary and to fulfill all the needs of the people coming from Ukraine, we do need also humanitarian aid. So I already spoke for 4 minutes. I know that I had 3. If you will give me more, then I could speak more, but then I will stop here and maybe you will ask me some questions.
Thank you so much, Victoria. You also ended with a very good segue to what I would ask Nina Luzinski from Gender Centrum Moldova, because I know, Nina, you've been active in coordinating humanitarian response from your side. And yeah, I'll give you the floor now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mavic. And first of all, I want to say my solidarity for women from Ukraine and for the people who makes the sustainability, the people to have this face with the invasion of the Russian. So yes, I'm at the part of the Moldovan voluntary group actually is the governmental voluntary group who works actually 24 hours for 7 days actually from these moments to help the people who are come from Ukraine. And these groups, I will share our how to say our apps and the information for the Ukrainian person who come in Moldova and need help or support from our side. So actually we have 80 days of total mobilization to provide humanitarian support of the 140,000 refugees who enter in Moldova. From these 65,000 citizens of Ukraine remain in our national territory, and 24,000 of them are children. So this number actually it's huge from Moldova. It's first of all when we meet of some phenomena, and for us it's a huge challenging to give this contribution, but we do the best from our side to give the humanitarian support. And actually our voluntary groups, Moldova for Peace, it concentrates to ensure these transit corridors between Moldova and Ukraine and Moldova and Romanian borders points, because most of them, always say the numbers, the Ukraine decide to pass from Moldova because Moldovan territory is not the safety one from them. Most of them decide this just to pass of our country, and we are all on the alert to help where we can and with what we can to further support. We have 3 types of supporting. We have the urgency supporting. It's food, accommodation, transportation, and also intermediate support. It's supposed to be logistical guidance, connection of the network of volunteers from the Romanian, and actually to support, to reunite the family who are in different countries. Part of them are in Moldova, part of them cross the border from the Polonia or in the Romania. So we make this connection between humanitarian support and between Romania and Moldova and Polonian. And also in the long term, the humanitarian support is supposed to be like a social integration of refugees and their children. What Victoria say here, from 8th day we have, like say, total mobilization to arrange accommodation, food production, placement and center, but also in the border crossing. But we have a lot of challenges, and the challenge is the limits of the resources, because 40% of our products in intern magazine comes from Ukraine. So we have a lot of challenges, like I say, economical challenges here. And another challenge for us is also to be part of this, how to say, it's the opening and the transparency of our governments, how to manage this humanitarian support. If our recommendation was like a civil society to be part of any process and each process of this humanitarian support, because it's important to have this collaboration between government and civil society. All this involved in this mobilization come from civil society. It was a lot of empathy of our population, but also we have this of a lot of, how to say, not safety sentiment about what's happening on the next day, especially what's happening about when we hear the news from the Ukrainian side. So I will share in our chat the platform what we can find, a lot of information about the documents, the center of the placement from the refugees, what we can get the train of the bus to get from another side of the border. So it's a lot of information, a lot of work of our volunteers who try to translate in the Ukrainian into Russian, and to try to be in alert to support each time of our sister and brothers. Actually, my colleagues from our organization gives a lot of their house and their how to say their apartment to share with our colleagues from Ukraine. So from my house now I have one woman from Odessa. So we have a lot, how to say, empathy and at the same time caring of what's happening now in Ukraine.
Thank you so much, Nina, for the information that you've shared. Thank you for everything that you do, and also to Victoria earlier, and to the Moldovan people for their solidarity and humanitarian support to Ukrainian citizens. I now move on to ask another dear friend and partner, Yulia Karashvili, Director of IDP Women's Association Consent. And Yulia, for many years, you've been part of the regional women's dialogue and other efforts to bring women from South Caucasus and Eastern Europe and Russia to actually prevent what has happened. And share with us your thoughts around that. And also, what is the implication of the Russian invasion on Georgia? Over to you, Yulia.
Thank you, Mavic. Good afternoon, morning, and evening for everybody. Can you hear me, Mavic?
Very well.
Yes.
And we can see you too.
Thank you very much. So one of implications, of course, is you know that Georgia did not openly support European Union sanctions, but inside the country goes mobilization both in governmental and non-governmental sector. All Ukrainians who found themselves in Georgia, and we do not have yet flow of displaced persons, but we believe that they will come to Georgia because in Georgia all conditions are prepared, that it's free shelters, organizations are prepared to give free food and medical assistance. There are some concerns. Civil society is mobilized, but what we see that in the regions which are close to the occupied territories of Georgia, and to Abkhazia and to South Ossetia, people are really very much concerned because it's immediate flashback from 2008 when not similar, of course, much smaller, but very painful for people when they become internally displaced or they were bombed and killed the same. And so people are expressing their solidarity, but also there are mostly fears in these areas because people are concerned that next might be our countries if the aggression will not be stopped, and stopped both by international community and by our solidarity. I will say that civil society in Georgia immediately was mobilized, especially women's organization, and we all work, and you will hear later, Yelena, Maya, we all work in close cooperation with our Ukrainian sisters. We each day are in cooperation. Also, Mavic mentions our regional platform for peace dialogue, and through our contacts from Global Network, we are in constant negotiations, and as we had small support from OSCE before, for capacity building, we use it now to support our Ukrainian friends. For the moment, directly in Ukraine, and Women's Information and Consultation Center in Ukraine is helping us with communication, and Maria Dmitrieva. And many thanks to Maria and to Olena who are helping us to support our Ukrainian friends with this very necessary money for the moment. We are collecting, also we opened Humanitarian account from here to provide a psychosocial rehabilitation, emergency intervention, both to here on the territory of Georgia and also online. I want to tell you that we cooperate with Coordinational Council created in UN to deal with situation. And we know already all addresses of humanitarian intervention, who will be responsible for what and what kind of assistance can be expected for people who will come. Currently, we have around 5,000 Ukrainians on the territory of Georgia who could not move back to their country, and they are all placed in hotels, what else, and they are assisted in the moment. But civil society organizations, women organizations in their regions are in constant cooperation with local authorities to organize stops, coordinational points, and to help to any kind of people who will come. So we want to ask our Ukrainian friends to say that, for instance, Georgian embassy in Romania is ready to assist to people who will go through Romania if they will have wish to come to Georgia, and also in other countries. So it was a message which I was asked to deliver, and we are ready to cooperate on the basis of each day. And please send us information. We try to coordinate relations between Ukrainian organizations in difficult situation and some of donor communities and UN. Thank you so much, Mavic. You are doing always this outstanding job to connect people, and we see the solidarity and 300 women who are here, and it's big power. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yulia, for explaining very clearly how this Russian invasion in Ukraine is not just a problem of Ukraine. And you put it in very, very vivid picture how that is happening. And thank you too for the solidarity of the Georgian people to the people of Ukraine. I will now turn it over to my colleague Malika to read some of the questions and direct them to our panelists. And we have 5 minutes to do that. But quickly, I also want to acknowledge a good friend, Tatiana Dwyer from the United Methodist Women, who contributed, who actually was one of the main coordinators of the regional women's dialogue platform that brought together women from South Caucasus, Eastern Europe, and Russia in, trying to prevent what is happening now. And I'm glad, I believe that still remains as one of the most important platforms that we can, use again. Over to you, Malika. Malika is the director of programs of GNWP for South Caucasus and Eastern Europe and humanitarian response.
Thank you, Mavic. I know that the chat has been extremely active, so I'll do my best to summarize some of the questions that were most popular to the panelists. So I think one common theme that came up was what can feminists do across the world and also regionally to support peace building efforts and humanitarian response. So how can we show our solidarity as women's rights organizations, whether you're from Tanzania, Venezuela, or Myanmar? How do we show our support to Ukrainian women? The second question was around other historically marginalized groups in Ukraine, like people with disabilities, Roma women, HIV positive people who are also facing unique impacts of the crisis and conflict. Are there particular needs that they have that are being unaddressed or particular impacts that you'd like to highlight? And then there's a question around increased risks of trafficking and gender-based violence as a result of the ongoing conflict. If there are any resources or mechanisms in place and that people can access or that we can amplify and highlight. And then the last question, I know it's a lot, but I think this is also important to mention, is on whether or not any organizations are documenting increasing reports of sexual violence, trafficking, and other human rights violations. And if not, how do we mobilize to ensure that we're holding perpetrators accountable for these crimes of aggression and crimes against humanity? So I'll open the floor to any panelists that would like to respond, but please remember—
Malika, if I may add, before we turn it over to our panelists, there's a very important question from our friend Tatiana Jiteneva from UN Women. If there is any opening for women's engagement in ceasefire talks.
Yes, okay. All right, so yeah, if any panelists can respond, but just please make sure you keep your intervention as brief as possible.
May I ask that we give the floor to Yulia Dzuba? She wanted to add something. or she's a participant on the audience and she cannot take floor.
Okay, sure. Yulia, you can speak.
We'll definitely give the floor. Oh, okay. Is that she coming in?
I think so. Go ahead, Yulia.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you see me? Hi, colleagues. I'm sorry for maybe disturbing you, but situation is becoming worse. And as you know, Russian army still in Ukraine, and Russia treacherously attacked my country at 5 a.m. on Tuesday in the middle of the week when no one was expecting, like you, I sleep in my peaceful bed, and in the morning, I wanted to go to the work, but it didn't happen. The bombs prevented chaos. I think it's 21st century, and it is center of Europe, like the place of democracy and humanity rights. And for me, it was like unexpected. I never expected my city will be engaged in war like this. Perhaps our partners have some misunderstanding of what Russia is doing in Ukraine. I think you should know that Russia is fighting with a deliberate violation of all conventions, law, and rules of war, trying to cause maximum damage of Ukraine critical infrastructure, civilian infrastructure, or ordinary people like my parents. I want to inform you that my parents still in small city named Chernigiv. It's near borders with Belarus, and Belarus start attack with their army our territory, and now no one can leave city. It's very dangerous, and it's true that if somebody try to leave, they will kill everybody without even recognizing. So Russian troops started using cluster bombs banned by Geneva Convention, if you know, and in peaceful Ukrainian cities like mine, like Kyiv, Chernigiv, Kharkiv, a single cluster bomb attack can deliver dose of hundreds of submissions which can share in big area and like several football fields and kill people. It's very dangerous for just people, for everybody who can stay just without any military without any guns, and trying to cause maximum panic moods at the refuge crisis. The Russian command could not help knowing what threatens in Ukraine, and some of military don't know what they do in Ukraine. If you ask them what you do, why you come to our territory, they will ask like, we don't know, we have just some special operation here. But what is this special operation? No one can respond. But by the way, the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. And now if you know, if you can check our morning news, and that Russian army still use our if you know our some nuclear power plants for make attacks, say if you do anything, we will attack your nuclear plants and you will have problem. But it's not just our problem. You should understand that it will be problem for all Europe, not just Europe. I think even for all world, because it's nuclear war. Yes, and literally even Russian soldiers involved in this attack understood perfectly well all the possible concerns, and this must be taken into account when trying to understand it. Motives of Russia and Ukraine. Russia's and continue do this all they do is world with nuclear catastrophe, and no one know what they will do tomorrow. Never before has any state tried to blackmail with massacre under a nuclear power plant, and any short form like tank, any hit by rocket or air bomb on the station can lead to many kilometers. And if you know.
Thank you. Sorry to cut you short, but I just want to give space to one more panelist to respond to some of the other questions that we had, and then we will have to close the event. Would any other panelists like to speak, perhaps on the monitoring of human rights violations or on the opportunities for supporting ceasefire or other peace building efforts? Yeah, go ahead, Maria.
Our governmental high commissioner for gender equality, Katerina Levchenko, and her team are now collecting both information about cases of sexual violence related to conflict, and they are putting together a database of local initiatives to make available to international donors and to personal donations, so that you look for something that is close to your heart and you support them. We have enough initiatives for everybody, including those who help abandoned animals and shelters for stray animals. There are initiatives to help people with disabilities. There are initiatives to help women who care for children with disabilities. The major issue now is that we cannot reliably have humanitarian corridors that would allow people to evacuate safely from the conflict affected areas.
Thank you, Maria, for that very helpful response. Mavic, back to you for closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Malika, for highlighting the important questions. And of course, this is not the only opportunity to respond to them. We will continue the conversation through our various chat groups with our Ukrainian colleagues and colleagues from Moldova and Georgia. And we will add them to the notes that we will be distributing. So we're the near final segment of our discussion, I would give our panelists 1 minute each to share their most important recommendations. If possible, limit it to one. We've documented your previous points. So what is your most important recommendation? Tamara, I will start with you.
Спасибо, Мавик. Я бы хотела обратить внимание всех. В 90-е годы Украина обладала огромным ядерным потенциалом. Будапештским соглашением мы под гарантией Соединенных Штатов Америки, Великобритании и России сдали все ядерное оружие. И сегодня мы терпим от России, которая убивает людей, которая наступает и объявила войну. Давайте вспомним, что есть международные соглашения, и поможем Украине отстоять право, может быть, в судах, еще где-то, для того, чтобы международные документы работали. Иначе это будет просто катастрофа для всех стран. Спасибо большое. Спасибо вам за поддержку. Спасибо, Мавик, вам за... И мы будем обращаться к вам, мы будем просить помощи, потому что нам очень тяжело.
Thank you so much, Tamara. Maria, your recommendation.
When Russia starts to say that they are ready to negotiate the peace, don't believe them. They are people who don't negotiate in good faith. We need to stop them in their tracks. And at this stage, I don't think Ukraine will be able to do it on its own. Also, take on the push your governments to adopt more sanctions. I don't know which those sanctions may be, but we need more of those to make Russia see that this invasion will not go unnoticed, how the invasion of Syria went. We need international support, we need international engagement, and we need to force them to back down. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Ella, your most important recommendation.
It's my recommendation to ask UN and other international organizations and also different countries if our resolution 1325 and other are working or no. It's just a paper for everybody, because it's Putin show us that our resolution, the resolution of UN, it's nothing. It's what we should do. For us, it's important document, and we are ready to support every country who understands this UN resolution is rule for everybody.
Thank you. Ellen Aruchecha from the Women's Information Center in Georgia. I'll give you a little bit more time. I know, yeah, you haven't spoken, but also because I know you've been part of many discussions on the role of Russia in the region and the need to continuously have a dialogue among women peace builders and women's rights organizations. Over to you, Elena.
Thank you, Mavic. Can I continue my answer of occupant language by Russian? Yes, first of all, for me, it's very difficult to talk today because every day we have communicate with Ukraine, and every moment. And now in Georgia, in front of Parliament, we have big meeting and we support Ukrainian people. But other side, Putin say us in this moment, if you make the sanction, the Georgia and other neighbor country was the next. Yes, we now situation it's very bad, and because it's my main recommendation, it's consolidation of international society and to ask and say them to stop war and close the air, because now it's need to stop the war because it's not possible. It's the first time in as I know, when during the negotiation the war and attack continue. And next, I think it's need to provide the humanitarian corridor. And third, it's my recommendation, it's also consolidation of women's organization and other organization, I don't know, but it's need to prevention of stop catastrophe, because we was of we remind the Chernobyl. And now and today, if the 2 of 8 day ago, I think about I can everything in here now. I think how if you start this catastrophe as same the Chernobyl, what's happened in the world, because the Ukrainian war, it's not war against Ukrainian or only this war against the every country, including the European. And my main action to consolidation and ask the stop attack. It's very important. Sorry, it's a very emotion and solidarity of Ukrainian, because now in this moment the Ukrainian people check me and ask, and 4 days already I cannot contact with my friend for Chernobyl, the oblast in Chernihiv Oblast, and I know they live, but it's despite of this, it's very difficult to talk at this time, but we think how we can help. Now I live in this moment in the villages, and my neighbors say 10 minutes ago, the Ukrainian refugees come in the Mangalisi, not Tbilisi, and the society in the village also to ready to help Ukrainian people, but unfortunately this is very less. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Elena. We completely understand the emotions, and thank you for your solidarity with our friends from Ukraine. And I know it's not just today; it has been continuing in all of your work on peace building and women's rights and gender equality. I apologize to our other panelists. I won't be able to give the floor again to you. I now would like to call on another very good friend, Martha Kebalo from the Women's Federation, Women's International Federation of Ukrainian, International Federation of Ukrainian Women's Organizations, and she's the UN representative, and she's also been part of the regional dialogue. Martha, over to you.
Thank you, Mavic. Thank you very much. From the Women's Federation of Ukrainian Women's Organizations, which is in the diaspora embraces 40 organizations in 31 countries and in full partnership with Ukraine's women's movement, the feminist movement in Ukraine, and as you said, a co-founder of that women's dialogue platform that is headed now by Yulia Kharashvili, and of which Olena Suslova and Katerina Levchenko, the gender policy commissioner in Ukraine, were founding members also. We've very much involved in the humanitarian, the informational, and very much emotionally involved also with all of you. Thank you so much to all of the speakers from different countries supporting Ukraine. And it's so good to see all your faces, even though everyone looks so tired and so stressed. I want to say, to recap, actually all of you have come out with such a list of such wonderful recommendations to bring out into the international sphere. We're going into the CSW now. We all have NGO forum parallel events that are planned. We ourselves have 3 slots for NGO parallel events. Come join us if we're able to mount them, because we're encountering some difficulties. But I ask all of you, please, let's take the NGO forum and whatever forum we find ourselves in to voice all of the concerns, all the recommendations that we have heard today. Some of them are quite short term, like the no-fly zone. Maybe that won't be an issue by the time the CSW starts. Maybe we'll have it, including also the sanctions, to keep up on very strong sanctions. To talk about the 1325 resolution, Ukraine has passed 2 national action plans for 1325, and Ukrainian women are extremely closely engaged, but we need a regional action plan in that Eastern Europe post-Soviet territory, as well as in other parts of the world. I'd like to just also ask you to please continue to push for UN reform, for reform of the UN Security Council. We haven't heard that here today. And also to emphasize what some people brought out, Ella in particular, asking for training for women, for all of us to be much more aware of exactly how to document war crimes, so that we can stop this this violation of rights of civilians, and also to recognize that this is a violation of rights, of national collective rights. It's a violation of our women's rights. It's a violation of individual rights. There are so many levels of violation going on here. Mavic, I don't know if I have more time to say more, but if that suffices, I thank you for your solidarity all around. And good luck to all of us. Let's communicate and cooperate. And please, in your parallel events, spend a little time talking about Ukraine. And if you can invite someone from the Ukraine area to come and join your parallel event at the last minute to share a little bit on update on what's going on from day to day, then that would be very helpful as well, so that we keep, Ukraine is just the latest atrocity that's going on right now, but it is one of a very big line of atrocities that we all have been witnessing over the last decades. So we need to make that point very, very loud and clear, that things need to change. Mechanisms need to be put in place for women, for people, for countries, for all of us. And so thank you very much for this opportunity to be with you.
Thank you so much, Martha, from the World Federation of Ukrainian Women's Organizations. You captured the important highlights of our conversation. And as already mentioned earlier, we will take notes. We will capture the important information and insights shared on the chat, and the other points emphasized by our panelists. And we will share this on our website and our social media platform. I just want to share with the audience members, if you have time, there is another discussion with Ukrainian women's rights activists right after this, co-organized by the National Women's Organization of the United Kingdom. I have shared the link on the chat. I hope you were able to see that. Thank you all very much. Thank you to our audience members. Thank you to our colleagues from Georgia and Moldova. Thank you to our co-organizers, but most especially, thank you to the Ukrainian women peace builders and women's rights activists from taking time out of unimaginably difficult situation that you are having now to share your experiences and to make your appeal to the international community. Thank you all, and stay safe. This meeting is now officially closed.
Thank you very much.